Hey, everybody. Uh, I'm really happy to have you here today. I want to talk about a topic that's really, really important. And I brought on one of my favorite marriage experts in the world to talk about it. And the topic is seducing your spouse. So by the end of this conversation, you're going to have some really great tools and tips that you've probably never done before to help you seduce your spouse in your marriage and kind of level up the amount of attraction and intimacy and romantic tension and flirtation. And it's going to be really great. We're going to talk to Monica Tanner and we're going to kick it over to her in just a second. But first, an intro. Monica.
Yes.
Hi,
How
welcome to the
are
show.
you, Nate?
How's it going?
So good. I loved your pump up music at the beginning. That was awesome.
We are both coming off of a pretty stressful morning, I think.
I don't.
You've been dealing with some kid drama. I've been dealing with some kid drama. Let me just let's get the real world out of the way just so we can acknowledge that it's present. Here's my hospital tags. I literally just walked in the door from the hospital. My daughter had surgery this morning. She had a cyst removed and a tumor removed from her leg. And the surgery was supposed to take like 60 to 90 minutes, and it ended up taking over 2.5 hours. And it was a little dramatic, and we were really nervous for a bit there because the doctors and nurses didn't do a great job filling us in. We were just kind of like left in the waiting room wondering what was going on. But essentially, just because I know you care and anybody else watching, you just have to stick with it. She had like a nerve and a little like a blood vessel dissecting the cyst over her eyebrow, and so they had to go in really carefully so as not to like disrupt the facial nerve or anything like that. And so they got rid of that, and then they went down to her leg, and that was also a little complicated. The tumor had gone all the way down to the muscle. It was really up close to the sciatic nerve, and he didn't want to mess with any of that, and so it just took him a really long time to be very cautious. But anyway, after a very early and very anxious morning, I'm here to talk to you, and I'm really glad that you made time. So
Yeah. So I'm so sorry to hear about all of the complications, but you stayed long enough for her to come out of anesthesia and everything?
yeah. She woke up, she ate, she cuddled with mom for a good hour or so. We got her in the car seat. She slept all the way home, and I figured I can either sit around and hover and like pretend like I'm doing something, or I can go be productive and have this call that we had scheduled. And so this is what we're doing.
Okay, well, good. Did you know that I spent most of my college experience doing that? I was pre-med, and so I would actually be in the recovery room when kids would come out of surgery and out of anesthesia.
I had no idea.
So yes, that is,
Wow.
yeah. So
That's
I
a
have
that's a
some
really
experience
interesting
there.
moment. Like, it's
Mhm.
hard to see those little kids be so groggy and disoriented and hungry, and it's a pretty emotional experience. So I was
Yeah.
I've never been more grateful for competent surgeons and doctors in my life, and I understand now, I think more than ever, the type of like love and worry that parents can have for their children when they're not doing so hot. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And it only grows
it
as
only
they grow.
grows. It only grows. So let's get down to business.
Mhm.
I want to talk to you about something that's really important and something that I think fades in a lot of marriages is this desire to seduce your spouse. I will just own it right now. I used to be amazing at seducing my partner, and then especially this last year and a half, it's just not. My seduction skills have waned, and I've been not performing to the level that I would hope that I would be performing in that area. You know, pregnancy will do that to you. COVID will do that to you. The extra 15 or 20 pounds that I put on. Um, there's just a lot going on. So I'm excited to talk to you and learn a little bit more about some things that I could be doing or we could be doing to seduce our spouses better. Where should we start?
Yeah, let's do it. Well, I think the absolute first place to start is just like you did, is to recognize it. I mean, definitely can't work on anything that we haven't recognized, and just decide to prioritize it. Like, hey, I want to, increase the passion and intimacy in my relationship, and so I'm going to focus on it. And, that's absolutely number one. The very first step is just to decide, like, this is something that's important to us in
Yeah.
our relationship. And so let's put a little time, energy, and resources towards this end.
I hear that. I think it's the thing that I've been thinking of lately is, I had a lot of roommates in college and all throughout my 20s, even as far back into my teens. And if you want to count like brothers and sisters as roommates, it's been my whole life. And the only roommate I've ever had sex with is my wife. And that's kind of the thing that distinguishes her from just a normal person that I'm sharing a house with. And like I don't want to lose that romantic tension, and so I do think it does require some prioritizing, some intentionality, and a little bit of work and effort. So I've taken step number one. I've acknowledged that this is something I want to be better at. So where to next?
All right. So, yeah. So once we've acknowledged it, we just have to decide. I think a really good step here would be to decide why. And so you actually did that very well just now. You talked about how, um, you know, sex is this really amazing, intimate part of a marriage that you can only do with your spouse. I mean, any other of the intimacies, like recreational intimacy, any of those other intimacies you can share with pretty much anyone, but sexual intimacy is for you and for your spouse.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy to fall into this, especially when things are stressful, especially when there's a lot of things going on. We think, well, if it's not on fire, I don't need to put it out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
A lot of
so
our attention goes to the things that are most urgent and not necessarily most important.
exactly. Exactly. And I actually experience that so much with what I do. Like, I'll be talking to a group of people and they'll say, what do you do or whatever? And I'll tell them and they'll be like, oh yeah, I need that. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing, right? And then I see it happen. They walk out the door or they leave my presence and they're like, it just falls right down to the bottom of the priorities, right? Because you walk out and your kid needs you and you got to get to the store and there's all these other things. It's really easy. If we don't keep it top of mind, it's just going to fall to the bottom of the to-do list.
I love that you said that, because I think this is just in general with the things that are most we tend to pay lip service to the things that are most important to us.
Touching a microphone or something somewhere.
Oh no, can you hear me better now?
Okay, yeah, that's better.
Sorry, I think my elbow was hitting the table. I think we tend to pay lip service to the things that are most important to us. And we say, oh, my family, my kids, my wife, my husband, whatever, definitely family first. But I think it's important to words mean nothing unless they're backed up with actions. And if you want to really see what somebody's priorities are, you look at their calendar. How are they spending their time? Look at their bank account. How are they spending their money? Look at their cell phone. Who are they spending time talking to? Who are they engaging with? Who are they messaging? And that'll tell you a lot more about what's really important to somebody than what they say. And I'm definitely guilty of this. I'm definitely guilty of prioritizing Reddit or YouTube over my marriage or over seducing my partner. And I think that honesty is being that honest with yourself is painful, but it's necessary.
It is necessary. And it also speaks to there's so many things that we can talk about when we start talking about desire. But what you just said really speaks to one of the reasons why, we can really love our partners, we can really love our spouse, but not desire them. And it's because we kind of create this, whether we mean to or not, this idea that our partner belongs to us, that they're just going to be there no matter what. There's like, I can let them drop to the bottom of my to-do list because I've made these covenants or we've made promises and they're just there. Like, it's fine. And it's really easy to kind of fall into that trap that, I have, I don't really need to work on that. These other things just need to take so much more priority because, my clients pay me and, my kids really depend on me and, my parents, they're getting older. Like it's really easy to prioritize all of these things and feel like they're more important because your partner's just there. Like they promised they'd always be there through thick and thin. It's fine.
Yeah.
And that crushes desire, right? It's that idea that, you know, divorce is not an option. Like that they're just always going to be there. Like it's fine. I'll get to that when I have some time.
Yeah. It's interesting when this is going to sound really weird. My entire life, I've grown up saying divorce is never going to be an option. We're not going to say the D word in our marriage. And I think that
Most people have.
that kind of language, I understand the sentiment, and I think it's a beautiful sentiment. Like we're never going to give up on our marriage, but also taking divorce off the table opens up the door to this idea that I can treat my partner however they want, and they're never going to go anywhere. I can misbehave, I can neglect, I can avoid confronting difficult things, I can let our marriage go to the crapper, and it doesn't matter how bad things get because my partner's committed to me no matter what. And I think there's a good side to that statement and a kind of a nasty side to it. And I think if we're not careful, because we're so confident that divorce is never going to come along, it does invite a sense of complacency. It invites a certain amount of kind of laziness, of avoidance, of I don't know, playing small, and it can really wreck your relationship if you take it for granted. And I think a lot of people do get surprised when their partner, they might have been grown up their entire life saying, oh, I'll never get divorced. Divorce won't be an option. And they make that promise to their partner on the day they get married, and they say it multiple times to each other. And then one day things get so bad that their partner just goes, I can't do this anymore. We need to get a divorce. And it's like, but we said. And anyway.
But I think almost even worse than that
Yeah.
is being in a marriage that's, like you say, is mediocre. Like it's like she can't divorce me, so we'll just sit here and be miserable. Like I mean, that's even worse than
just
like
tolerating
the idea
each other's existence for the rest of your life.
Exactly, right? Yeah, because you haven't
to
paid
avoid
any
the
attention.
stigma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or just because divorce is not an option. So if divorce is not an option, I don't have to try at this. And naturally, when we don't put any effort towards anything, it just slowly deteriorates.
Yep.
And the worst thing is if you're like, well, this is deteriorated, but there's nothing I can do about it. So this is just my life and it sucks, right? Yeah. Like that's no good.
Okay. So how do we infuse some hope into this conversation?
Well, we seduce each other over and over and over again.
Got it.
That's how we handle this. That's how we take care of this idea.
I just realized I moved this.
We're not centered.
It's okay. Keep talking.
Messing with your OCD. So the Seduce Your Spouse Challenge is all about, or seducing your spouse is all about learning how to powerfully attract your partner. And if we think about, how did we initially attract our partner? Well, they were somebody new, they were mysterious, there were, the excitement and adrenaline that came when you're learning all of these new things about this person, and they're reflecting back the very best aspects of you, right? It's exciting, it's pleasurable, it's the attraction is so strong, whether you're agreeing on things or not. It's just exciting to like learn about this person that's outside of yourself, right? And so the real danger that we get into marriage is this idea that you've already done that. Like there's nothing new to learn about each other. There's they're just who they are, and like the excitement is gone, and we no longer feel like we need to make any type of effort to get to know this person or powerfully attract them to us.
I love that. Keep going.
So that puts the onus, so we can talk about either side of the couple, right? So like it puts the onus on us to continue to grow and expand ourselves and be interesting and, work on ourselves. And it puts the onus on our partners as well to do the same thing, but then also to be interested and excited about learning new things. Like one of the most common things I hear from people who come to me is like, how can I get more support from my spouse? Like my spouse doesn't care about my business or what I'm passionate about or something like that, right? And I'm like, why do they don't misinterpret not being passionate about what you're passionate about, or like having something in common, right? With your partner not being passionate about you. You actually don't need to have so much in common with your partner to have an amazing, passionate, fun-filled, exciting relationship, because you being different, separate, and apart from each other is actually what brings the passion. Having different ideas about things, different perspectives, different passions, honestly, right? So my husband gets really passionate about coaching. And so just now when we started this phone call, we were having this conversation around all of these things that have to do with my husband coaching, right? I don't get into the coaching part of it at all. So I'm a really easy to talk to for all the people. But I love watching him do his thing, right? I don't get passionate about the positions, and when he starts talking about the different strategies in the game and like things like that, I kind of zone, like I gloss over. I'm like, okay, you're,
Yeah.
but when I
And
see him
to be
out
just to
there,
clarify, your husband coaches sports teams like your kids and stuff.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, sorry, yes, yes.
Not
So he
like
coaches
business
my
coaching
kids.
or life coaching or anything like that.
Exactly. Okay, right. But I do that kind of coaching, right? So my husband coaches kids in different sports.
Yeah.
He coaches high school soccer and he coaches my daughter's basketball team, right? Well, I don't get passionate in all the details about his coaching, but man, when I'm on the sideline watching him do his thing, and like how the kids respond to him, and like it makes me just love him that much more. And
Mm.
when he can share with me the ups and the downs and the different things like that, I don't have to get into the details to like really appreciate his passion about that thing, right? On the flip side, I do relationship and intimacy coaching, right? And I start talking to him about that and he glazes over. But when he sees like an interview like this, or when he sees me get really passionate about the thing that I'm doing, it's not that he's passionate about what I'm doing. It's like it's my passion, my excitement, my growth that draws him to me. It powerfully attracts him, right?
Yeah.
And so the number one thing that we can do is to be interesting, to be passionate, to kind of ditch this idea that we have to become one. I mean, there's beauty in that, but like this idea that we have to meld together, that we have to compromise, that we have to like somehow make ourselves less so that for the sake of the relationship. No,
Yeah.
it's like be the biggest version of yourself, like develop yourself in all of the ways. And even if your partner isn't into however you're choosing to develop yourself, like that's so attractive to them when you're passionate and when you're excited and you're growing and those types of things. So I think it's really, really, really important to have a really good sense of who you are and who you want to be, and separate and aside from your marriage.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot to take in here. I love that you're talking about basically if you want your partner to be more interested in you, then you need to be more interesting.
Yes.
If your partner is disengaged, if they don't seem like they're interested in you, if there's something weird going on there, and you're like, oh, we haven't had sex in a long time, if you want your partner to be attracted to you, you have to do things that are attractive. And the image that popped into my mind when you were talking was the yin and the yang symbol, and
Yes.
how like that symbol is a symbol of kind of completeness. It's a symbol of you know two things coming together to make a whole, in a sense. And you don't the image isn't of a yin and a yin or a yang and a yang. It's a yin and a yang. It's these two different things coming together to kind of complement each other. And
Yeah.
I do
Yes.
think when we think of becoming one as a couple, it's important to not think of becoming the same, but bringing our gifts and bringing our personalities and bringing our individual talents and interests into the relationship to add flavor and spice and perspective and a new worldview to your partner's experience. And I think just from understanding my audience and knowing, having tons of friends that are all married and have kids, I think one of the things that gets in our way a lot of the time is we're just so freaking busy. Like, when do I have time to go pursue an interest? What if I'm just so busy with life and with my commitments and with work and children and all of the other crazy things that we have going on in our lives? What if I just don't even know where to start?
Great question. I mean, those can be your passions, and for a long time they were, right? I was really passionate about my kids, but it's not like when my husband came home, I just gave him the rundown of like, this kid pooped their pants this many times and like I mean, it was like I developed my passions around those themes, right? Like I got really excited about the next milestones our kids were going to achieve, and it's like you don't have to like create a new thing to be passionate about. Get passionate about whatever it is that you're doing. So, um, I mean, yeah, and I also remember in that really in the thick the season of the thick of raising kids where I kind of lost my identity, what most moms tend to do, right? Is you're just like, all I do is change diapers and wipe noses and clean up macaroni and cheese. And like, who am I, right? It was a matter of like, how do I be the best mom I possibly can be for these kids? And so I got really passionate around their developmental stages and, how I could get out of the weeds of changing diapers and things like that. It was like, maybe learning, what parts of their brains fire off when they learn to crawl or when they learn to walk or whatever. Like you can definitely get interested in whatever it is you're doing. So like my husband, he goes to his job and, he has a business and he's really, busy in that sense that he has a job and he's not really passionate about his day-to-day job, but he can learn new things about like maybe how to market it or,
Leadership principles.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you see like it's part of what he's doing day to day, but it's something to get excited about. It's a new angle or a new perspective or something that you can share. Or even if it's just like, you know, sharing with each other the ups and downs of the busy of what you're doing, right? And
Yeah.
and moving towards that shared vision. I think it's really important to have a shared vision. The reason why is because you have a shared vision, but your goals don't have to be the same. Like the way I'm going to get to this shared vision is very different than the way he's going to get to this shared vision. And so, you develop yourself within the bounds of, you can have interesting conversations around, this is what I'm doing. I think the danger comes when you think you have to have the very same goals, you have to get to the very same place, you have to think about the very same things. No, you have, differentiate yourself and enjoy your separate lives, bringing it together under this kind of shared vision.
I love that. Creating a shared vision and allowing your partner to contribute and arrive at that shared vision in a different, following a different path than you maybe have taken. If you could paint an example of maybe your shared vision or somebody's that you've worked with, what would that, could you paint that picture for us?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it looks different for everyone.
Yeah.
I see my husband and I at the top of a mountain. Like that's how I kind of visualize. We love to hike. And there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be inclement weather. There's going to be times when the path gets crazy. And I just embrace all of it. Like I like to think that when I'm at the top of the mountain I'm going to be there with him hand in hand and we'll get to look down over all of it. So if we're having like a rough patch, I just think of that as part of it. Like that's just part of the story, right? Like when there's all kinds of visuals, but like when we're at the top of the mountain, we see that rough patch, we're going to be like, oh my gosh, you remember that? You remember like that quicksand that was there and we had to like, learn how to do this or that or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like they'll all be part of that experience of getting to that destination together. And it's more about the transformation than it ever is about the destination.
Mhm.
So whether you're going through, these amazing, beautiful times where you just look out and see the view and the weather is perfect and you're laughing and holding hands along the trail. Or, you're on one side of the trail and he's on the other side of the trail and it's like pouring down rain on you and you're running out of food, and like whatever it is, good or bad, just when you imagine yourself at the top looking down, like it's just part of it. Like that was, we learned this incredible skill through that really difficult hardship, or this is the blessing that came out of that. I just always, like, I know that the story has a happy ending, so I can get through the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I know that when we get to the top, that's just going to be like part of that narrative, part of that storyline, part of that transformation.
I love that visual. The question that popped into my mind while you were painting that picture is, what would you say to the couple or to the individual watching this right now who yearns for that, who really wants to get to that place where they can look backwards and be like, oh man, look at all the things we went through together and how we came together through the hard times and the amazing things that we had. But maybe they're feeling right now like they're in a very long-term slump. Like they've been in a valley that's just filled with like rocks and boulders, and they've kind of lost their way on their journey to the top of the mountain, and they're feeling a little hopeless. What would you say to them?
Yeah. And it's the first question I ask whenever I talk to anyone is, do you believe this has a happy ending? And if they can honestly say yes, that this story has a happy ending, we will get to the top, right? Then it's all about figuring out what needs to happen in order to get there, right? It really just takes belief, because even if you're in a really, really rocky patch, if you believe that that story has a happy ending, then it's just about getting through the rocky patch. It's about getting the skills. It's about getting the support. It's about getting the, you could say like everybody who's on the trail has a backpack and it has stuff in it, right? And so like it's just about figuring out what it is in that backpack that's going to help you get through this part of your journey. We all have it within us. It's just a matter of like, who can help us figure it out? What is the tool? What is the thing that's going to get us through this? Because we will get through it, right? And we will get through it. It's just a matter of figuring out how.
Does this story have a happy ending? That's a powerful question. And I think like the other question that pops into my mind is, what does that happy ending look like for you?
Exactly.
If
you've got to know where you're going, right? You've got to know where you're starting, and you've got to know where you're going. If you've got those two down, it's just a matter of how are we going to get there?
Yeah. I mean, that's how a map works, right? A map is completely useless if you don't know where you are on the map and where you're going. And until you have some clarity around those two things, you can't really get from point A to point B. So if you're feeling a little hopeless, if you're feeling a little lonely, if you're feeling like the spiciness, the flirtation, the sexiness, the attraction has waned, you got to be honest with where you're at, and then you got to create a clear vision of what's the hopeful future you have, and then what does it take to get there?
Right.
Yeah.
Who's been there before? What do I need to learn? What, do I need to learn some rock climbing right here? Do I need to what is it?
Let's take this analogy and make it a little bit more practical. What are some of the skills that you think couples should be working to master in order to reintroduce or strengthen the passion and connection that they have in their marriage that maybe most couples neglect?
This is going to sound like a strange answer, but we were talking about at the beginning. I think that to reignite the passion in your marriage, you've got to start with yourself. You've got to get excited about who you are and where you're going and how you're going to get there. Like that's number one. So I would say, take a real honest inventory about how you feel about yourself, about your life, about your sexual history, how you feel about that. Like, I think that change and growth in your marriage really, really starts within you. You can't change your partner. We know that. We can't change the circumstances around us. So let's start with what we can control, and that's us. So, number one, if you're feeling in a slump, start taking inventory on yourself. How do I feel about myself? How do I have goals that I'm working towards? Do I have things that I'm areas in which I can grow and learn and develop different skill sets? In specifically talking about marriage, learn some things about communication and conflict resolution and connection. Like those are really important aspects of a relationship, but they start with you.
Mm, I love that. I also love that you mentioned understanding your own sexual history.
Yeah.
That's, I think that's something that people don't think about or even avoid in a lot of cases, but it's something that definitely impacts your relationship. I know it's something that I have avoided a lot in my life. You know, a lot of the sexual shame that I grew up with. I grew up with so much shame, and I've learned to be more comfortable talking about it, but it's still something I feel a lot of. I feel a lot of avoidance around, and that's interesting. Like that's one of the things I'm going to take away from what you just mentioned is to go explore my sexual past and maybe even write a sexual my autobiographical sexual journey from my life of like what are the things that I was taught, what are the things that I believe about myself, what are the things that in my sexual development that went well, and what are the things that didn't go well. You know, what's the baggage I'm still carrying with me, how is it impacting my relationship with my wife. Like those are all, man, that's a lot to unpack, and I haven't really thought about doing that for quite a while.
So
So,
good. So maybe you get really, really, really passionate about learning about yourself sexually. I mean, maybe that's the next right step for you in your relationship. Maybe that's what's going to ignite, the passion and the intimacy back is you just really take a really good sexual self-assessment. How do you feel about sex? But then you'll know where you're starting, right? And then draw a really beautiful picture of what do you want intimacy to look like in your relationship. Now, hopefully, your spouse will be willing to do a similar thing, right? And then you can come together and be like, what does the top of our sexual mountain look like? And I'm not talking about how many times a week you're having sex or whatever. You're talking about like, what does true intimacy look like for us
mm,
emotionally, physically, sexually? Like, what is enveloped in all of that for us specifically? And then you can go back and review romantic experiences that you've had together, sexual experiences that you've had together. What were the good and bad contexts associated with those?
I love that.
That's
So, you mentioned a word, and I wanted to share this quote with you because I think listeners will enjoy it, but also you will enjoy it. So, you know how much I love David Schnarch, right?
oh yes.
So, he has a friend of mine shared this quote with me from one of his books. I can't remember exactly which one it is, but it's one I haven't read yet. And it's a, he talks about the difference between closeness and intimacy.
Hmm.
And you say the word intimacy, and I think it's important to clarify what intimacy is. And I think this thing that I read yesterday gave me clarity that I haven't had before, so I wanted to share it with you. um, he says Malone and Malone, some researchers back in 1987, state that closeness is the experience of contact with another characterized by the qualities of being together with, part of, or at one with that other person. In contrast, intimacy is the process of being in touch with or knowing oneself in the presence of a partner. Intimacy differs from meditation or introspection because which are ways of looking at oneself. Said differently, closeness is the experience of contact with the partner. Intimacy is the recursive experience and disclosure of the self in the presence of the partner. So, intimacy and closeness are not the
That's a
same
lot of
thing.
psychobabble to me, but let's unpack
Well,
it.
let me break it down.
Yeah.
So, you can be close to your partner. You can share physical proximity. You can have sex with them. You can make out with them. You can hold hands with them. You can be in the same room as them. You can giggle and laugh together. And that isn't necessarily intimacy. Intimacy is when you're with another person, but you also allow yourself to be fully seen. You also let
Mhm.
your guard down. And just because you're sharing romantic experiences together, just because you're naked together, just because you're doing things with them that you'd never do with anybody else, doesn't mean you're necessarily experiencing intimacy. the thing that separates intimacy and closeness is that closeness is being in contact with the partner, but intimacy is being in contact with your partner and disclosing yourself, allowing yourself to be seen. And that means your desires, your worries, your fears, your anxieties, your insecurities, your victories. There's all sorts of ways that we try and kind of hide our imperfections or hide things from our partner because we might think it's weird or we might think we might get judged. But true intimacy doesn't come. It comes. It's more than just being close. True intimacy is allowing yourself to be rejected, to be known so well that you run the risk of being rejected and hurt in ways that
Which is
you,
vulnerability.
yeah, yeah. And so I think it's important to kind of clarify that's part of what makes love so amazing is that it requires risk. And if you're not taking the risk, you never get to experience the reward. There's always that ratio of risk versus reward. And I think people try. I was interviewing Jennifer Finlayson Fife a couple of months ago, and she said, people get married because they feel seen and heard and connected to somebody, and then once they kind of lock in their partner and they commit, they spend we all spend a lot of time and energy trying to immediately make our relationship safe. And that safety oftentimes means we hide things and we don't play all out, and we turn everything down to medium. We suck the saturation out of the love, and that makes us feel safe because we're not like putting anything really out on the line. We're not risking anything, but at the same time, it kills the passion. It like
The
sucks
desire.
anything, all of the interesting things out of the relationship.
Because when we don't feel like we're fully actualized in ourself, that's what it requires for desire, right?
Yeah.
Love and safety and security is one thing. We feel safe and we can trust our partner, but can we really trust them if we're not fully actualizing ourselves? And
Right.
that's where that desire comes from. That's where that mystery and passion comes from, when you can even take risks with yourself. Like
Yeah.
when you can feel like, I'm going to try this thing and it may or may not work. Like, I don't actually know, but you feel safe enough with your partner to be able to take risks with yourself and them.
Yeah.
That is desire and seduction. And it's this curiosity, right? If we can always be curious with ourselves, like, I wonder how this will feel. Or I wonder if I can, I want to more fully develop this idea of, we can talk about our religious beliefs, or we can talk about, a hobby, or we can talk about anything, right? If I can take risks and feel safe in your presence, learning these things about myself, that is this beautiful idea of sharing yourself fully with another person. Maybe you don't even know yourself the outcome of this, but feeling safe to explore that and allow another human to see you and to me see, like, the good, the bad, the ugly. That is really the at the heart of desire, in that pendulum swing, love and desire.
I'm learning a lot in this conversation. I'm realizing I have a lot to work on. I want to. What would you say? I'm going to rephrase this thought. Sorry, I'm jumbled around in my brain a little bit. But what would you say to somebody who maybe they're hearing this and they go, "Wow, my partner really needs this." I'm pretty good at maybe pursuing a passion or an interest or opening up and being open to new ideas, but my partner's just kind of boring. They're stuck in a rut, they're married to their job, or they're glued to their phone or to Netflix. They don't seem to have any interest in doing anything other than kind of the routine, boring, safe stuff. What would you say to that person?
Oh, well, I would say, how could you possibly know that? Like, are you being curious about them? Like, right? I mean, you can't possibly know. And that's the trap we fall into, is this certainty. It's coming back around, right? It's this certainty. Like, I know how they're going to respond to that. I know what they're going to do. Like, all they want to do is this, right? And that's safer for you to believe that about them than to go out and to really get curious and allow yourself to learn new things about your partner. It's much safer for me to just believe that my husband is super predictable. Like he's going to come home from work, he's going to do the dishes, he's going to hang out with my kids for a little bit, and then he's going to nestle in with a Netflix show. Like that creates some safety for me to just believe that that's how it's always going to be, right? But what if I stirred the waters a little bit, right? What if I asked a new question? Or what if I showed up in a way that was different than I normally do in that routine? Or, like, what if I allowed him the space to not do that? That's a risk on my part. So if you think that you're certain about, my partner's just this way and I'm interested in learning and growing and they're not, you've created a little bit of a boundary and safety around you in relation to your partner.
Fair enough. Get curious.
So mix it up, right? Or Nate, you did so well, like, or this is my partner. They're not interested in changing and doing anything, right? So go meet them at the door with a 6-second kiss and see how that messes with their routine, right? Or like, plan a date that's like something super exciting and interesting to you. Like I always use the mountain bike example. Like my husband took me mountain biking. I had no idea my husband liked mountain biking. Like no idea. Like it was hugely out of my comfort zone to go mountain biking. But it's like one of our favorite things to do in the summer. Like my husband's getting all the kids new mountain bikes so we can go mountain biking. I don't actually love mountain biking, but I had no idea that he liked it. Just introduce date nights or just show up with a weird hat on, or like you mix up the routine.
Show up with a weird hat on.
I mean, I was like, I know your audience mostly have kids, but like, I mean, if you can set up a scenario where you're baking naked with your apron on or whatever when your spouse gets home, like, I'm guessing that's going to shake up the routine enough to be like, whoa, like, and then bring up like what it is that you want to explore. Like if it's your intimacy, if it's your, if you want to introduce this into your marriage, like let's say you're feeling in a rut and, there's not a lot of sexual tension and, you feel like you've totally just fallen into a routine there, then take it upon yourself and mix that up. Like do something a little bit shocking in that area and say, hey, I feel like we've grown stale here. And I would love to take some steps to really like explore my sexuality, explore your sexuality. It's just like developing any other skill. You want to get strong, you got to go to the gym. You want to get more intellectual knowledge about some certain subject, get those books and start reading about it, right? If you want to develop your sexuality, it's just like any other thing, and explain that to your spouse and invite them to join you on this journey of sexual exploration. Right?
You make it sound so easy, Monica.
Do I? It's not easy, but it's simple. It's very simple.
I'm just trying to speak as the listener here,
Yeah. Well, so as someone listening and you think we've kind of grown into a little bit of roommate syndrome, that's your thing, right? We're feeling like roommates. Like any other roommate, if you were to come home with some like weird surprise, your roommate's going to be like, whoa, like throw a wrench in the routine. Like take it upon yourself and throw a big, massive wrench in the routine.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I noticed that when I throw a wrench in the routine, really interesting things happen. Something as simple as like a couple weeks ago, I just told my wife, I'm sick of watching TV. Can we just what if we just didn't watch TV for a week? What would happen?
Or what if we started watching TV naked?
Yeah. Or
what if we just said every single time we go to watch a show, no clothes?
Yeah, what would happen? That is an interesting question. That's a good experiment to try.
Right. What if you just showed up to, she turns on Netflix, your favorite show,
All right, here
and
we
you
go.
come out totally naked?
That was a lot. I don't wear that many clothes. It doesn't take me that. It's typically just one or two.
You don't wear that many layers. Right. Or like, what if you, I mean, you can, if somebody's sitting there going like, I don't know if I can show up naked. Right. So what if you just introduce some other new way to do that?
Right. Set up a blanket fort. We can watch TV, but we can only watch TV on the iPad in the blanket fort. I remember
Yeah.
for what was this for? I don't remember. Maybe it was Valentine's Day. Angelin loves camping. I hate it. Hate it. And our first Valentine's Day together, I set up our a tent in my living room and then put up sparkly Christmas lights on the ceiling. And we filled up an air mattress and like camped indoors. It was not outside because it was February and it was freezing cold. But I remember she loved that. I used to be good at disrupting the patterns, Monica. I think I need to like bring that back.
You just said it. I was about to say, you know what it is? It's just a pattern interrupt. If
Yeah.
you're feeling like you're getting into this routine or you're just mindlessly
Interrupt the
going through
routine.
your life or scrolling, just introduce a pattern interrupt. It doesn't have to be some like earth shattering thing. It can be anything,
I'm gonna
but
go buy
just
some booty shorts.
introduce a pattern interrupt. And when your spouse goes, what is this about? Talk to them about how you're feeling. Get vulnerable. Take a
Yeah.
risk. Be like, hey, listen, I feel like we're getting into this really mundane routine, and I just want to mix it up and ask them to participate.
Yeah.
And maybe they will, or maybe they won't. But either way, you've definitely introduced some newness into the relationship.
So Monica, if I wanted somebody to like hold my hand through this process and kind of help me along the way, do you have any like thoughts, ideas, resources that might be helpful?
Absolutely. So crazy you would ask me that.
Because
Next
I just
week,
want to plug this really quick. I am a big fan of being an action taker, not just an insight chaser. I've gotten insights from this conversation, but I already know that it's not going to impact my marriage unless I go take action on some of the stuff that I've learned. And I know a lot of people need a little help taking action. They need somebody to hold them accountable. They need, maybe they need to break things down into little micro steps so that they can get little victories to help them remember, oh, this is how all this works. And so I'm hoping you have something cool to share with us that can help us get a win here.
absolutely, I do. So next week, we're starting the Seduce Your Spouse
Next
Challenge.
week?
Next week,
I really
April
totally
19th.
forgot that it was next week.
April 19th, we're starting a Seduce Your Spouse Challenge. It's totally free. It happens in a Facebook group. You just come, and every day for 5 days, we're going to talk about these pattern interrupts. We're going to talk about how to seduce your spouse. It's just how to, and I know people get kind of a little nervous about that word, like seduce my spouse. How to powerfully attract your spouse. And as we've been talking, Nate, I realized basically all I'm going to help you do is introduce a pattern interrupt into your relationship. That's it.
Yeah.
All it is. It's you're going to introduce, by the end of this 5 days, you will have a powerful pattern interrupt to interject into your marriage. And then you can take that in whatever direction it goes.
I love
But that's what we're just going to like shock it. We're just going to like, say, hey, we're still alive. My marriage is still important to me. I want to prioritize you. Basically, we're going to prioritize our partners for 5 days and just see what happens. See where that takes us.
Where would one go to sign up for such a challenge?
You would go to onthebrightersideofmarriage.com/SYS challenge. So
Seduce your spouse.
SYS seduce, it stands for seduce your spouse. So
Okay.
SYS challenge.
I will drop a link down below in the description in case anybody wants to go check this out. I am committing right now. I will do this because with everything that's been going on in my world, I will admit, I've gotten more complacent than I would like myself to be. And this conversation has awoken a new desire in me to like, it's shaken me awake a little bit. And I really appreciate that. So
And
I
that's all it is. I love it. See, I love this because I'm like, Nate, I like have so much respect for you. You're like one of my favorite marriage researchers, right? Married couples who spend all of their time thinking about marriage are not immune to the natural rhythms of a marriage. Like
no,
it's just, you have to commit over and over and over again. It's not because there's anything flawed with you or your relationship. It just means we have to bring it back up to the top and remember that it's important all the time.
yeah, I love it. Monica, thank you for showing up and giving me a little smack in the face with so much love. I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank
So
you, Nate.
I wanna wrap up this conversation, but I'm gonna jump over to another card here. Hang on, let me see if I can figure out how to do this. I haven't done this live, so if you enjoyed this
Whoa.
conversation, make sure you check out the link down in the description so you can find the Seduce Your Spouse challenge if it's still going on. And if you want more, I'm going to put a video up right next to me, right over here, where you can learn more about sexy stuff like we talked about today. Thanks for joining us, everybody.